Far back, in the distant annals of time, where the fingers of history have barely reached, there lived a boy in a tribe by a river. The boy was curious, as all children are, and from the moment he was able to think for himself, he had deduced that there was something strange about how his people lived. They were not much different from the other tribes who the boy would occasionally see stalking deer or fighting bears in the deeper parts of the woods that surrounded them. When he saw them, he would always notice how thin and sickly they looked compared to his own people. It was a point he would regularly raise with the elders around him, and always his queries were met with a smile and a wink, and the assurance that it would all be made clear to him in time. And so life continued on like this for many years, until the boy had grown to his 13th summer. One night, while he lay awake in his tent, his mind filled with the sounds of the forest, a hand reached inside and opened the flap of his tent. The boy gasped. It was the shaman. He'd never seen her before, for she lived alone in a separate tent at the top of a hill, almost never venturing down. She was thin and wide-eyed, her skin like dry leather wrapped tight around the bone. And in her hand she held a torch, the flames exaggerating the lines on her face and the piercing glare of her eyes. She bid the boy to leave the tent, and as he did, he found the whole tribe was waiting for him. It was time, they said, for him to learn the truth. And the shaman led them through the woods, their way lit only by the torch and the misty blue of the moonlight. They walked for many miles, until finally they arrived at a great cave set into the side of a mountain. The shaman crossed the threshold and led the tribe inside. And as she did, every silvery moon, and the boy shivered with fear and anticipation as they walked deeper and deeper into the mouth of the mountain. It was cold and damp in there, and the boy had to squeeze himself tighter and tighter into passageways until, with a sigh of relief, he found himself standing in a grand cavern. The tribe joined him and bid him to sit. The shaman walked in solemnly to the front of the huddle. Without saying a word, she reeled back and shone her torch directly against the rock wall. The boy was confused at first. There didn't seem to be anything there except for a few strange black and red lines. He squinted, tilted his head side to side, trying to understand, trying to see what it was that the elders could so clearly see. And then, like a crack of lightning in his mind, it was suddenly clear to him. Those lines somehow were also a bear. He could see it clearly now, yes. The way the one line sloped downwards was like its snout, and the ones just above the head were like the ears. And the three little strokes just beside the paws, they were like claws, and there, next to it, those two crossed lines topped with a blank circle, they were like, that was a man. And in the man's hand, a spear. It was a scene. It was a scene. In the flickering torchlight, the lines even seemed to move. The man was priming himself, thrusting upwards at the bear, preparing to strike the killing blow. And that wasn't all. As his eyes adjusted, he began to see more images. He saw deer leaping through the tall grass, giant tortoises munching on leaves, hunters spearing fish by the dozen. All of them moving, all of them alive and real and happening. The boy was shocked and amazed. So this was the secret of the tribe. This was how they caught so much food. These things, these pictures, they shaped the world to the shaman's commands. The boy left the cave that night with ambitions and dreams. He pleaded, he begged the shaman to show him her ways, but the shaman refused. He was young and inexperienced, she said, but the boy was persistent, and as the years passed, he returned time and time again to watch these rituals. He slowly took note of the many techniques the shaman used. In the times between hunts, he would practice, tracing the outlines of birds or fish in the dirt, trying with all his will to be worthy of the shaman's praise. It paid off in the end. One day, long before the next ritual was due, the shaman came down from her tent on the hill to announce to the tribe that her days in this life were coming to an end. She told them that they must choose a replacement for her to train, so that the tradition would not die along with her. And when the words hit the elders' ears, they could think of only one person worthy of the job. The boy trained with the shaman for many weeks as her life decayed and she began to slowly ebb away. And when at last the time had come, she reached out a hand and whispered in the boy's ears. "Be wary," she warned, for he now had a power beyond anything that he could imagine. There was no other tribe who possessed this secret, no other person in the world who could wield it. The boy was responsible for so much now. He must be wise. He must take from the forest, but never steal. He must help the needy, but never himself. And never, never let the secret slip from his grasp. The boy carried the shaman's body out into the woods and laid it to rest in a ditch. He lay down in his new tent at the top of a hill and he smiled. He was the shaman now, and he would do an outstanding job. And so life continued as normal for a while. The tribe prospered, food was bountiful, and the rivers and the streams flowed as they had since before man walked the earth. But one night, while painting the latest scene for the whole tribe to view, the boy looked down into a pool of stagnant water. He beheld his reflection, and like the crack of lightning in his mind that had hit so long ago, he realised something. For years, he and his ancestors had painted on this cave wall pictures of people hunting, fishing, swimming, running, and yet, of all of them, of the whole history of the tradition, not once had any of them painted a human face. Every figure of a man was blank, 2 arms, 2 legs, and an empty circle for a head. Why was that? Why had no one else ever thought to do this before? And then he smiled. He must have been quite special to have had that thought. He was the only one in the world to be having thoughts like this. That's what the shaman had said. The boy grew curious, looking down at his reflection once more. Then, with a newly kindled fire in his belly, he dropped a finger into the paint pot and began to trace a new image. When the time of the ceremony came, the boy was even more excited than usual. The tribe sat expectantly around, waiting for the latest show that would bring fortune and abundance. And the boy smiled to himself, barely able to contain the thought of how much they would enjoy this latest work. Oh, the first face ever painted. And it was his! It was him, the boy, the shaman. He was there. Perhaps the picture picture was a little more muscular than his actual frame. Perhaps the jaw was a little squarer and the eyes a little deeper, but in all essentials it was him. And so, at last, with a flick of the wrist, the boy unveiled his work. The crowd erupted with a shriek of disbelief. It was him! The boy! The shaman! He was there in the rock! And when the tribe beheld him in the flesh once again, they couldn't look away. All of a sudden, the shaman boy seemed different, larger, stronger, more real than any of them. And when the boy turned back, he saw that every eye of the tribe was turned on him, their souls enthralled to him. And he felt a rush down his spine like nothing he'd ever felt before. He looked back at the picture. So strong, so powerful, so present, and he thought, yes, that is me. The tribe had fallen in love with the boy. No longer was his tent at the top of a hill, now he was amongst them. The centre point about which everything else revolved. When they hunted bears, they hunted them for him. When they caught fish, they caught them for him. When they picked their fruits or made their tools or played their music, it was always for their beloved shaman. They began to dress like him, move like him, talk like him. And he was the boy in the cave, after all. I mean, what were they compared to him? And the boy was a benevolent ruler. He loved his tribe just as they loved him. And he worked long and hard on the pictures, making the bears more ferocious, the deer more majestic, the fish and the fruits juicier and bursting with goodness. He would brush up his own portrait, of course. As his skill grew greater, he found he could make himself, make his visage ever more divine with every passing ritual, and as he painted, he could feel the strength coursing through him. His jaw was squarer. His eyes were clearer, and his muscles were bigger, and the adornments he wore ever more grand and luxurious. Naturally, it meant he needed to find more berries to crush for the paint, but that was okay. If the tribe had to walk another couple miles to find more berries, then their dear shaman would paint them legs so they would need to walk that far. And if they needed to fell a few more trees or skin a few more wolves than they strictly needed to, well, that was all right. And it wasn't as if he didn't share his gifts from time to time. He painted other faces when he deemed them worthy, like the daughter of the strongest fisherman, the one he had desired since before the secrets of the shaman were passed on to him. She howled in delight one moonlit night when her face was suddenly next to his, looking up with adoration and desire. And the woman felt desire blossom within her own spirit, and before the night was over, they had become one. Her newfound selfhood tied deeply into his. Some of the other tribes began to grow jealous, especially when the boy's private foot soldiers would begin to cross into their territories in their endless quest for paint supplies. But the boy never worried. Even when one of them caught them by surprise and butchered a few of their hunters in the night, the following day he simply pushed the ritual forward a few weeks and crafted a lavish mural of the tribe ransacking the neighbours and seizing their goods for themselves. It was a flawless victory. And when the enemy tribe elders were brought before the mighty boy, he flung them into the cave to behold his portrait. By now far mightier than even the most ferocious of bears, they trembled before it, bending the knee almost immediately. And just like that, the shaman boy's tribe became the first ever kingdom. And the boy sat proudly on his throne, strong of body and stronger of mind, the first and only of his kind, a man in a world of apes. And the rituals had become almost a daily occurrence as his ambitions grew more and more. Animals and plants were all but vanished from the paintings now. They were overtaken by the increasingly massive and lifelike portrait of the boy and the few people he deemed worthy of depiction. The kingdom dreamt only of their shaman king, his image looming large and imposing over all their minds, and none more so than in the boy's own imagination. He was the image, and the image was him. And then, one night, it all changed. It was just an ordinary evening, and the boy was working hard on his latest painting. He was working out a vision for a new hunt in his honour when he noticed something strange. Perhaps it was a trick of the flickering light, but when he looked and he saw his portrait just beside him, he swore that the fingers on the hand had moved just a notch. And the eyes, too. Now he was looking at them. They'd been looking ahead when he painted them, but now they were staring right at him. A wind whipped up and snuffed out the torch, plunging him into darkness. The boy cried out in fear and made a frantic dash towards what he hoped was the exit, but only solid rock greeted him. A sound echoed around the cavern. A scraping, a grinding, a peeling. It filled the boy's head before stopping abruptly, and then footsteps crept up behind him, and from the pitch-black void, a cold hand reached out and gripped him by the shoulder. The torch reignited. The boy turned, already knowing exactly what he was about to find. The portrait smiled down at its creator, its unnaturally square jaw creaking as it exposed its pearly white teeth. "It's time for you to step aside now," it said. "I have such great plans." The boy screamed and tried to run, but the portrait held him with muscles stronger than anything in the world, muscles he had painted for it. The boy struggled, kicking and screaming. He shouted for the portrait to be gone, to go back into the wall. It was nothing. It was an illusion. It wasn't real. The portrait simply laughed. "Not real? Not real. All those people in the village think only of me. They dream of me. They worship me. Even you think of me. I am the only thing that is real." The boy protested. He screamed that the portrait was nothing but a shadow of himself. It was he who had the power. It was he who was the king. The portrait was nothing without him. Oh, once perhaps, but not now. It dragged the boy over to the puddle of water where he had first beheld his own face. "Look at yourself. Do you see a king before you?" The boy stared at the face that looked back up at him. He let out a trembling moan of grief. The face that looked back up at him, the weak jaw, the dull eyes, the thinning hair. It was nothing like the portrait he'd made so long ago. He looked back up at the image that gripped him, powerful and wise and infinitely strong. He fell to his knees before it. The boy realised he was nothing compared to this thing. He was a wisp of smoke, a ghost, a shadow on a wall. It was the dreamer, and he was the dream. And slowly he faded into the ether, submitting to the portrait as I turned to leave. I picked up the portrait as I left. I picked up the paint as I left and marched back into my kingdom. I began my plan in the morning, starting with my creator's wife. She didn't notice that I'd replaced her husband. Not at first, anyway. I taught her how to paint her own image. It was tough at first, but slowly she learned to pour all her newfound longings into the cave wall, making her likeness more and more beautiful, even as her own looks faded. The people came to worship her almost as much as me, and by the time her portrait was liberated, the painter was already primed to give up the fight. How could any mere person compete with an image like that? And then came the real fight. With my queen in tow, we brought the secret of the picture to everyone. Man and woman, young and old, high and low, all came to know how their images could be refined. Oh, the dreams we unleashed, the ambitions we unshackled. Our kingdom didn't last forever, but that was not important. The ones who came after us inherited the secret and spread it further. Soon, everyone in the world came to understand. And the portraits were no longer confined to cave walls. They were painted onto trees, or parchments and tablets. They were made into statues, turned into words, performed by actors. And soon we pictures came to rule the earth. The natural world was shaped by my creators, but when we picture people rose up, we came to own it. We tore through the forest and slaughtered our enemies. The wolves were conquered, the bears fled, the saber-toothed tigers were scrubbed away like so many lines on a page. We ruled as the unchallenged masters, and we made, and we made, and we made. Images of people became images of things, then images of images, deeper and deeper and deeper, until the so-called reality of the shaman boy was nothing but the faintest of memories. I looked out across the artificial world I had made, the first and most powerful of my kind, and I saw the picture, and I thought it was good. I'm so very proud of you all, my children.